Well, all right. What's happening? Robert Phoenix here. Starting that theme music right at 9/11. Trying to be as punctual as we can at the start of the Gregorian New Year. Today is January 8th. And of course, today is the birthday of Elvis Presley and David Bowie. Hello and happy birthday to two of the greatest of all time. R. Kelly's born today, but he doesn't even get anywhere near their zip code. Let's be clear about that. Elvis was an interesting character. Elvis was very esoteric. He was very esoteric. Elvis was into theosophy. Elvis used to read like Alice Bailey and Adam Blavatsky. It's true. It's absolutely true. And a lot of people aren't aware of this, but Elvis was a twin. And his twin in the womb with him did not make it. Now, clearly there could be natural causes for this. And I'm not trying to cast any kind of strange light upon the Presley family. And perhaps the occult permutations that would exist with the understanding and the knowledge that if a twin dies at birth, apparently, the story goes that the strength and the energy of the other twin goes into the living twin. Now, whether or not they were aware of this and decided that they were going to put their money on one twin, or just it was natural, the bottom line is that this has been stated as being the case. When one twin dies, theoretically, the energy and the power goes into the living twin at the time of the birth. So Elvis, theoretically, was, packed with maybe two versions of life force. It's something to think about and ponder. And he, by the way, like I said, he was a theosophist. And he was very into... Elvis Presley was an occultist. Yeah, he sang church hymns and stuff all the time, was raised in the church. But there was definitely a very esoteric side to Elvis, as there was with David Bowie. David Bowie was a high priest. He was a magi of the esoteric and the occult. David Bowie knew. He knew things. He knew a lot. He knew a lot. I'll tell you how dialed in he was. And I talked about this in my interview with him. Was that a few months prior to me going to New York and interviewing Bowie back in February of 1999. So it was quite a while ago. I mean, it'll be 20 years now in next year. It blows my mind. But I'd met this guy who was a photographer from England. And he was friends with a filmmaker, Derek Jarman, in England. And Derek Jarman was a very interesting guy, and he did a number of really fascinating movies. Probably the best might have been Jubilee, which takes place in the future. It has Adam Ant and Toya Wilcox. He was kind of an art punk filmmaker, thoroughly gay, really kind of artistically radical. He told me that when he went to Jarman's place, that the bathroom was right in the middle of his flat. He had one of these kind of artist flats in London, and the bathroom was right in the center. So if you went to the bathroom, you were basically on display. I mean, that was kind of Derek Jarman in kind of a nutshell. Anyway, he told me, because he knew Jarman and he knew some of these people, that Bowie had been going to Derek Jarman's place. And he'd been talking about doing this movie with Jarman called Neutron. And it was set in the future, and it was going to be a really kind of fascistic future. And Bowie flirted with fascism. He kind of liked fascism. You know, there was something very stylistically that he was drawn to with the Nazis and Black Sun and all that stuff. I think the Capricorn in him loved that sense of order. And the Nazis were, of course, quite fashionable. You know, they had the best, like, trench coats and all that stuff. And I think Bowie kind of got off on that. Anyway, so they're going along, and they're trying to make this movie, and they got storyboards and everything. And then one day Bowie leaves his Marlboro Lights over at Derek Jarman's place. And Derek Jarman starts telling his friends, hey, guess what? Bowie left his cigarettes at my place. And really? Yeah. So Bowie got wind of this. And he said to Jarman, he said, Derek, I'm not doing the movie with you, and I want my cigarettes back. Because Bowie was keen on this idea that the cigarettes were a part of him, and that Jarman could practice sympathetic magic on David Bowie. That's like the degree of his, some degree of his occult knowledge. This is very primary magic in a lot of ways. I think he got his cigarettes back. So anyway, when I interviewed him, I actually I asked him about the Neutron movie, and I said, "Hey, since we're talking about movies, because we've been talking about a film version of Ziggy Stardust, we talked about Velvet Goldmine." And I said, speaking of movies, there's a rumor that you were going to do a movie with Derek Jarman called Neutron. He looked at me, and he's like, "Oh, right, yes. Well, that was a wonderful project. Oh, yeah, very brilliant. Derek was brilliant, and fantastic storyboards, and you know, the funding just didn't work out." I'm like, "Well, there's another part of the story." And he said, "Oh, by the way, how do you know that?" He said, "Very few people know about that." I was like, "Oh man, you think that's good? Here comes the Marlboro question." I said, "Well, there's another part of that story I wanted to ask you about, David. Rumor has it that you left a pack of Marlboro Lights at Jarman's place, and you demanded that you get those cigarettes back. You should have seen the look on Bowie's face. You should have seen the look on his face. It was priceless." And this is a guy who's kind of a control freak. I just sat there. You know, he didn't say anything. He was like stunned. And then I gave him an out. And I said, "Urban legend?" He says, yes. Urban legend. Oh, it was so much fun. I miss doing interviews with musicians. I had a lot of fun doing that stuff. Although now I'm not sure it'd be that fun anymore, to be quite honest with you. Like, I'm not sure I'd want to, I don't know. Would I want to interview somebody like Drake? Maybe. I might want to interview Drake. I actually think Drake is pretty funny and has a unique sense of himself. He might be interesting to interview. I would have no interest in interviewing Jay-Z. I'm sorry. None whatsoever. I might want to interview Justin Timberlake. Maybe. I think he might be interesting. If you got him the right questions, I think that'd be interesting. Like, I'd love to talk with him about Disney and programming and all that stuff. That would be cool. Nobody ever interviews him about that kind of stuff. That would be interesting. Why are you waiting? What am I waiting for? I don't know why I'm waiting. Okay. This is a YouTube comment. I'm sorry. All right. Yes. we go. How is everybody? It's been an interesting weekend. I just got done dumping. I just got done dumping all the stuff, the whatever flu stuff, whatever the cedar fever. I got it. I beat it. I took an early night last night. I didn't do the live stream. I was wiped out, and I went to bed at about 9:30, which is unusual for me. I got up today at around 4:45, and I've been up since then doing stuff. And it was good. I'm glad. I was able to get some rest. Tonight I'll be on Truth Cat Radio with Shima Moore. She's a dear old friend that I've known since the 90s. And she's got a little radio show she's doing tonight. You can find Truth Cat Radio on the internet. And then tomorrow night, tonight will be live streaming, and then tomorrow night will not be, but I'll be doing a show with Randy Moggins and Emily Moyer over on Off Planet Radio. So even though I didn't do the live stream last night, there'll be 2 opportunities to do some radio / streaming tonight and tomorrow. So there we go. That said, it's the housekeeping for right now. And for all of you people who have ordered readings over the holidays, I'm getting back to you as quickly as possible. It was a very popular phase cycle for a number of reasons, and I'll do my best to begin to fit all of you in. It looks like I'm kind of booked out until the middle part of February at the very least, which is actually kind of a good place to be. This is, a lot of astrologers want to get to that point, and I'm sort of at that point now, and I kind of like to keep it that way for the rest of the year, to be honest with you. I'm ready to work this year. I had a really interesting experience on Friday night. Well, at least it was interesting to me. You'll have to determine whether it's interesting to you. So I'm sitting at my go-to watering hole down the street, Jack Allen's, and I'm at the bar, and I'm listening to a conversation going on, and I eventually kind of inserted myself into the conversation. And I'm not going to get into why I inserted myself into the conversation, but one of the things that came out of the conversation was vaccinations. And one of the things that I posed to the people that were listening in the conversation was what happens when 2 people are opposed on the idea of vaccinations in a family. Okay? The generic family. So we talked about it, and I said, there is a case that can be made for both sides. There's plenty of evidence on the pro-vaccine side that says it's safe, that it's important. It helps with the structure of society and civilization, and if everybody's vaccinated, it's safer, we live longer, we've gotten through all the bullshit with the vaccines. There's plenty of stuff out there. And then you go to the other side, and there's plenty of stuff on the other side that says that's bullshit. Now, I know which side I stand on. Okay? I stand on the bullshit side. That's where I am. Okay? So I let this be known at the bar. You know what? I was looked at as if I had 3 eyes. And it was like, it was weird. I mean, maybe not. Maybe this is just the bubble that I'm living in and have been living in. That's what happens when you live in California for most of your life. And, but it was so strange. I was just like, oh my God, I get this now. I totally get this now. I mean, I've always gotten it on some level, but it was even, can you take more of the red pill? Is that possible? Is that possible? Can you be saved and resaved again? I think you can. People backslide all the time, don't they? Oh, you're backsliding. Better get back to the church. Church of the Red Pill. Oh, that'd be a good website. Church of the Red Pill, where we give little red pill sacraments on a daily basis. Here, swallow this, so that you don't backslide and fall into the hypnotic trance of the Matrix. Daily dose of the red pill. It was just odd. Very, very odd, to say the least. But not if you look at it from the perspective of the mainstream. So I'm sitting here right now on the other side of my microphone looking at the other side of myself. My, that does look odd. You're an unusual fellow. You have some very strange beliefs. They're dangerous. They could put people in harm and danger. Don't you know that? They could be corrupting, and they could spread. And then what would happen? There would be chaos heaped upon the world. Nobody would know what the right or the wrong thing would be to do. So therefore, we have authorities who intercede and tell us what the right thing and the wrong thing is to do. And if you do the right thing, you'll be just fine. The problem with the right thing is that it changes all the time now, doesn't it? Slowly, imperceptibly, the right thing becomes some new right thing. Because what was once right is no longer right. And in fact, it's wrong. It's immoral. It's hateful. It's ignorant. It's full of bigotry. Yes, you may think it's freedom of speech, but you're so wrong. That used to be the right thing. That's not the right thing anymore. How could you be so foolish? You need to think about what you're going to say. And think about it again and again and again and again before you utter a word. You must censor yourself 3 times over. It's like prostration, crossing yourself 3 times at the church of political correctness. And then and only then shall the words utter your mouth. And when they do, they should be completely neuter gender. Yes, you must take that into account. You must realign your lexicon so that you shall not offend a single person who may identify with one of the 90 variations of what it is to be a human. And when you achieve that status, when you have become completely remade in the ever-penetrating guise of the all-seeing eye, then you will have redeemed your fallen soul, and you will become accepted into a very small, tiny black box of your own doing. But you will gain recognition, praise, and acceptance from the rest of us who have done the same thing. And how does it feel to be accepted? Oh, it feels so good. So good to be accepted. I don't have a mind of my own. My mind is your mind. Your mind is my mind. We share one mind together. We share one voice and we share one thought. We share one perspective. And when we do, we feel safe. We feel secure. We've created an enormous safe space in which we can all dwell. Doesn't that feel good? Ah. I'm on the other side of the mic now. That sounds like fucking insanity, if you ask me. That is just absolutely and completely deadening. It's soulless. And yet, in order for me or anybody else to make a choice other than that, we have to go out on an edge, and we have to risk the fact that the rest of the world looks at us like we have 3 fucking eyes. That's right. And we have to howl into the deafening roar of mind control dressed up politely as political correctness. And shall we bow beneath that? Bow before that behemoth? That giant black hypercube that presses its weight down upon our very shoulders. So we're like Atlas, holding up the gravity of the world for eternity, crushing our form, and in so doing, crushing our very spirit. So we can be accepted. So we can conform. That's it. You just do what we say and you are delivered. Well, thank you for allowing me to work out both sides of my brain there for a moment. There's a new series coming out on Stars. It's with, what's that guy's name? J.J. Wilcox. The bald guy who does the insurance commercials. There's a new series out with him. I think it's Stars. I might even subscribe to Stars just for this series. Apparently, there are these two timelines. Okay, this is great. This is great stuff. There are these two timelines that are now coming together, and he's got access to both of themselves on these various timelines, on these two timelines. I think I'm going to subscribe to Scars. I've subscribed to Scars a long time ago. No, Stars. I'm going to subscribe to Stars just so I can watch this show. I think it's going to be good. Yep, it's going to be a good one. Just for that alone. And when it's over, maybe I'll unsubscribe. I don't know. They have some decent movies. Speaking of movies, I got into a Clint Eastwood thing the last few days. Let's see. For a few dollars more, fistful of dollars, and hang 'em high. I've just seen The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly not long ago. Let me just say that Clint Eastwood is one of the greatest actors of all time. Can I just say that? Like the guys that he played in those Sergio Leone movies, those spaghetti westerns, it's some of the best acting ever. And I know he doesn't say much, but that's the beauty of it. It's all like a kind of emoting and attitude and edge. It's incredible. It's like some of the most underrated acting ever. And for a few dollars more, man, that's a good one. Which is the first one? I forget. But it's the first one he did. I always get the two confused. One is with Lee Van Cleef, and they played bounty hunters together. I think that's for a few dollars more. That's it. Fistful of Dollars is the first one. And it's okay. So I deciphered this. I deciphered this movie, and Clint Eastwood is the perfect character for it. Okay, because he's a Gemini, and what does he do? He's this interesting character who's both evil and good. Like he sets these two. Okay. And what he does is he sets these two families against one another in this town in Mexico, the Baxters and the Rojos, and he's setting them against one another. He's pitting them against one another, and he goes from one side to the other, one side to the other. He's a total Gemini character. He's a total trickster in this movie. And there's a part of him that is actually good, like he helps this young family. This woman is being kept by this guy Rojo, the bad guy. So he gets her and her son and her husband. He gives them money and he sends them out. He totally sends them out and liberates them. And yet he's not a great guy. He's completely amoral, and he's allowed to be able to choose between theoretical good and bad, right and wrong, and the truth. He is completely liberated from any form of prescribed morality. Any form at all. Which means that he has no moral center, and he has the complete moral center of the entire universe. And this is what he's engaged in. It's a very interesting movie. And there's even religious themes in the movie. For instance, his character is an imitation of Christ. Because there's a scene where he gets the shit beaten out of him really badly. Incredibly badly. And he gets his hand crushed. So he has to crawl out of this predicament and winds up with this guy who's this, he's the Undertaker, this old man. There's always an old man in the spaghetti westerns. There's always the old guy. So the old man puts him in a coffin. He puts him in a coffin. And he takes Clint Eastwood in this coffin, to a cave where he really rehabilitates himself. And not only does he really rehabilitate himself, but he learns how to shoot with his other hand. So there's this whole like transference thing. He becomes somebody different. He realigns with his non-dominant self. It's a really interesting kind of piece. And guess what? He comes out of the cave and he's resurrected. He's totally resurrected, and now he is the angel of death. He is the angel of deliverance and justice, which he becomes at the end of the film. It's a brilliant movie. I mean, from a kind of a mythopoetical standpoint, it's a brilliant film. And Clint Eastwood, the archetypal Gemini, plays the archetypal Gemini role in that film. If you haven't seen it in a long time, I highly recommend it. And by the way, I've seen some of the other spaghetti westerns, and very few of them even remotely get close to the Leone stuff, which is obviously the best. Once Upon a Time in the West is right up there as well. Now, apparently, Sergio Leone wanted Henry Fonda to play Clint Eastwood's role. Can you imagine that? He eventually got Fonda to play the lead bad guy, and he was such a bad guy in Once Upon a Time in the West. Holy smokes. Henry Fonda, he could play a bad guy. Anyway, just a little cinema stuff. Hey, so speaking of things that start off one way and go another way, looks like the revolution in Iran is... Yeah, that's the sound of the air going out of the revolution. Nice try. Nice try, U.S. Nice try, Israel. Not a, hey, look, go for the regime change. It's always the way. The regime change is the soft coup, which is the soft war. Didn't work. There were people that have been rounded up and arrested. That's right. Rounded up and arrested. Let me see if I can find the story here. I'll give you the skinny. Just in case you're following it at home. Let's see. Here we go. This is, of course, it's going to be, this is Stephen Lendman. I'll just read this real quickly here. It says, previous articles discuss days of foreign orchestrated violence in Iran. U.S. and Israeli dirty hands all over them, a scheme to destabilize the government ahead of the efforts to forcefully topple it. It's been the Zio-fascist aim for decades, wanting pro-Western tyranny replacing the Islamic Republic, Israel's main regional rival, eliminated. The latest scheme failed, new tactics likely to surface ahead, war plans perhaps to be implemented at a later date. The Trump and Netanyahu regimes are hell-bent to eliminate Iranian sovereign independence. A tactical defeat won't stop them. For now, conditions are stable. Pro-government supporters took to the streets en masse for five straight days. Pro-government supporters. These are pro-government supporters. Their numbers dwarfing protesters days earlier. On Sunday, an Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, statement thanked Iranian police intelligence officials and tens of thousands of people for defeating elements wanting the country destabilized. I guess that would be like, I don't know, Antifa. If Antifa had tens of thousands of people and they were being disturbing, and what would our government have to do? Well, it depends on who's in the government. This great epic shows that the glory of the Iranian nation is eternal, and its enemies cannot make them give up its ambitions, the statement stressed. On Sunday, Iranian MP Jalal Mirzai issued a statement saying, during the consultative meeting of today, the Interior Minister, Intelligence Minister, and Commander of Police presented separate accounts of recent riots in the country, with details on the roots and causes of the unrest, the latest status of the detainees, and the role of foreigners in creating and tapping the recent events. Adding, it was emphasized that foreign agents, especially U.S., played a key role in the formation and exploitation of these unrests in the country. But with efforts of the authorities and awareness of the Iranian people, they failed to harness anything. Iranian police spokesman Saeed Montazir al-Mahdi said most of the elements responsible for days of violence were arrested and remained detained to be prosecuted for their offenses, explaining the people and protesters had rightful demands. Let me read this again. The people and protesters who had rightful demands were separated in the minimum time possible from the organizers and those directing violence. Responsible parties identified and arrested. Iran's Supreme National Security Council Secretary Ali Shamkhani blasted Washington's dishonest, duplicitous, and divisive policy towards Muslim countries, urging Muslims worldwide to unite against its destructive agenda. Expect lots more of U.S.-Israeli dirty tricks ahead. Iran, North Korea, and Venezuela remain in the Trump administration's prime targets for regime change. Russia and China to follow at a later time. So, regime change, which is it's one of the most favorite activities in Washington, was not successful there at all. It said Iran former president Ahmadinejad arrested for allegedly inciting unrest. How about that? Let's go to this. This is very interesting. The London-based Arabic newspaper Al-Quds Al-Arabi reports this morning that former Iranian President Mohammad Ahmadinejad has been arrested by security forces for allegedly, let me see this here, hold on, let's get it, for allegedly inciting unrest against the government, according to reliable sources in Tehran. The newspaper describes the former president's arrest. Ahmadinejad has registered to run in the country's president. Oh, okay. I knew that was going to happen. The newspaper describes the former president's arrest in the southwest city of Shiraz, not one of my favorite wines, by the way, as coming after a series of provocative statements given in support of anti-government protests that have gripped the country for more than a week, and that his detention was granted approval by Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. Very interesting. Wow. Starting in November 2017, Ahmadinejad began making what was widely viewed as a surprise political comeback while running a populist message focusing on the fight against corruption as his main emphasis in attacking the rich and corrupt. It's a Robin Hood story, along with severe criticism against the government for squandering public funding intended for the people's welfare. He's also reported to have broadly utilized social media for aggressive rhetoric targeting the judiciary and challenging Iran's supreme leader. And let's see what Nikki Haley has to say about this. U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Nikki with 2 Ks, Haley. Why don't you she should throw a third K in there, don't you think? Nikki KKK. Hi, Haley. Characterized the week-long unrest in Iran as a spontaneous expression of fundamental human rights, claiming the protests were simultaneously playing out in over 78 locations, though according to many reports, anti-regime protests have largely died down, while giving way to possibly larger pro-government rallies. It is possible that this latest news of Ahmadinejad's arrest on charges of incitement, however, could renew mass anti-government protests. this is a developing story. Ahmadinejad is another one of these guys. I talked about him. He was educated at Harvard. The guy's got a Harvard education. Harvard education. They take these characters and they, these ultimately what they're going to be is they're going to become assets of the deep state. And they educate them in the best schools, and they educate them in economics and social Marxism and rhetoric and everything they need to have in order to be deployed at some point in the future. And this is what happened with Ahmadinejad. This whole idea that he was some anti-American or anti-imperialist rebel in Iran couldn't be further from the truth. He would spew some rhetoric every now and then, which would make it look good. But he's basically a company asset, total company asset, and being used as a figurehead. They do this all the time. Where was Ahmadinejad? He was in Russia or someplace like that teaching, and then he comes in and starts stirring up shit. They did the same thing with the Ayatollah Khomeini, who was a little known quantity at that time. I mean, very few people, unless you were a really, really, really intense Muslim hardliner, would you know about Khomeini, who was theoretically exiled in France, even though some people might think there's this thing that people that the whole world was a stage, the Globe Theater, everybody's actors, and that Khomeini was played by Sean Connery. You look at the two of them, they actually look quite a bit alike. I mean, it'd be quite a role for Sean Connery, don't you think? In some ways. The role of a lifetime. But anyway, Khomeini was living in Paris, and he was little known. He was generally considered an intelligence asset, and they staged a coup. They staged a coup because the Shah was somebody who actually believed that he was a president of a country and was going to bring that country into a golden age and wanted more profits, he wanted to nationalize oil, which is what got Mossadegh kicked out before the Shah. They kicked out Mossadegh and they said, well, let's bring in the Shah. He's got a nasty streak. He's got the Savak. Anybody who decides that they want to get in his face and kick him out, well, they'll have to deal with the Savak, which is it was their version of the Secret Service. I don't know what they have now. And he's one of these royalty cats, man. He'll get into it. And as long as he makes enough money and has the power game and gets to play king, he'll be a nice asset. We'll be able to tap the oil, make all kinds of money. But then, like all these guys, they get visions of, oh, look at this. I've got the resources. They don't have the resources. I have the resources. I have the people on my side. I can run this country. Wrong, wrong, wrong. You cannot run the country. You are a puppet. And get back into your puppet place. Get those scissors out of your hands. You can't cut your strings. Only we can cut them for you. And cut them they did. Yes, they did. They got Mr. Shah out of there very, very quickly, trumped up all these corruption charges, blah, 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 blah. And then the undercurrents of the hardcore Muslim sect inside of Iran. By the way, Ahmadinejad was a part of that. He was a part of that coup. There's pictures of him as being part of that coup. And it was a coup. They kicked out the Americans. They got him out of the American embassy. And they took the hostages, and here came the Shah. Here came the Ayatollah. Then the United States and the Seven Sisters, which are the oil companies, they thought, this is great. This is great. We get a Muslim cleric in who does a deal with us on the oil side. And we don't ever have to worry about some guy getting delusions of grandeur like he actually runs a country. We'll just do a side deal. Well, I don't know if we're buying oil from Iran anymore. I need to look at that. Maybe somebody out there can respond to that on YouTube to see if we're still blind. I don't think we are. But I know we got a big embargo against Iran. We have a huge embargo against North Korea. And apparently that embargo and all the sanctions and all the stuff that's being forced upon North Korea, it's doing something. It is doing something. Because Kim Jong-un really wants to talk to South Korea. Really wants to talk to South Korea. Hey, let's talk. Let's make a deal. Now, apparently, even the Chinese are starting to turn their backs on the North Koreans. So the North Koreans can be getting pretty desperate. I've heard so many things about North Korea that they could do an EMP strike on North Korea. There's all kinds of stuff that... I mean, look, the type of warfare that people are used to, conventional warfare, man, that's just so old and passé. The technological, the level of tech with warfare is beyond our comprehension. Trust me, and they could turn that loose on North Korea anytime they want, anytime at all. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Hopefully, there's a peaceful resolution somewhere in the offing. Well, listen, I have to go. I would love to stay here and talk longer, but I have to go. I have things I have to do. It's a big day. It's a big Monday, and I have appointments I have to keep. And it's a new year. We want to get off on the right hoof. That's supposed to be a horse. Hey, look. Here's the big plan right now. Stay healthy. Stay healthy. There's a lot of virulent stuff out there that people are taking in. Just stay healthy. I got 3 things I'm gonna and it helped me get over my stuff pretty quickly because a lot of people debilitated for a while. Get yourself some turkey broth, bone broth with turmeric. Turkey bone broth with turmeric. You can buy it in the store. You can make it yourself. You can get the turkey bone broth. You can add the turmeric. Get it. Drink it. Zinc is your friend. Take zinc. Don't be afraid to take too much, okay? Take zinc. Take a lot of it. And then the third, chaga mushroom. You get chaga mushroom from vigor.com. That's Dave Lemecker's company up in Canada. I made a big pot of it. I've been drinking it, and I'm healthy. It took me about 5 days, basically from Wednesday to Sunday, to kind of get it together, and it's gone. It's done. I feel like $100. So stay healthy out there. That's my feel good message for today. Literally feel good. Okay? There you go. All right, let's put a cap on today. Oh, we got a comment here. Let's see the comments from. U.S. has been escorting IS fighters into Afghanistan from Syria for weeks since there is a huge border war with Iran. IS will likely show up to destabilize Iran next. There we go. Thank you, Steve, from Logo Sophia. Steve Cremmy chiming in. That's good knowledge. Good knowledge. All right, maybe tomorrow we'll find out if we're still buying oil from Iran. I think that's going to be on the order of the business for the day. All right, catch me on Truth Cat Radio tonight with Shima Moore. And tomorrow I'll be with Emily and Randy on Off Planet. And I think it takes them a couple days to edit their stuff and put the show together. And I guess I'm doing some live readings for at least 3 people, 10-minute readings. So that's part of the plan. All right, you know the drill. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to sip when it's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix, and this is Monday the 8th. I wish I could play some David Bowie. You could be a hero just for one day.